What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the House of Holocrons, episode 52. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about some of our favorite Disney Plus shows and the new media that we've been getting since the Disney Plus launch of the streaming service. We'll also be talking about a few things between Kathleen Kennedy or the promotion of Dave Filoni, and just the base way that we feel about a lot of the very quick, not naysayers, but the people who just want to find something to dog on. And hey guys, just to let you know, we're going to be doing this awesome podcast into two parts, covering main four and then another four in the next episode coming very soon. And we will then be giving it that last part of this second episode, our favorites. So be sure to check that one out coming next week. So to start that off, simply put it, Dave Filoni is now CCO. That means he is the head of the story. When somebody has a storyboard for a show, they're going to involve him in that, not for him to throw Ahsoka in, not for him to put Rex in it randomly, for him to make sure that it is continuity, that it has a great lineup with how everything else is releasing and nobody's stepping on anybody's toes. When you have this many directors and this many producers all working on different projects, you need somebody who is there to literally just say, you can't do that because this character did this in the last movie and that won't mesh well with each other. Kathleen Kennedy, on the other hand, who is not fired and will not be, so you can stop thinking that. She deals with the money and finding people to do the lighting, to do the rigging, to build the sets.
It's a quick misunderstanding because we've had George Lucas, which is kind of the head of all Star Wars.
Yeah.
The creative mind in everything.
Yep.
He's the father, as we call it. Even though it was a team effort, but he came up with all of the ideas, and he was the sole driver of that, which is technically not a CEO role. So that's the misunderstanding when we get into company levels. Kathleen Kennedy as CEO isn't the head of creative. I mean, she can make final decisions, which not fully true, because usually CEOs have to still go before board and does make the final decisions. She just has a little more weight on the board than most people.
And the big thing that I feel like with the things that Kathleen Kennedy's more worried about was the recent closing of the Halcyon Star Cruiser. That's more her concern. She's like, why did this fail? And how can we never spend that much money on something again that will just fail?
I mean, everything's on our shoulders, whether it be employees, whether it be the future of Star Wars, whether it be
Disney Plus in general is exactly. That's a great point, actually.
So it's what assets they have now, what they have coming, and LucasArts in general, not just Disney shows, not just toys, not just comics, not just books. It's the whole thing together. And then she's also got to make Disney happy. She's got to make the people who own the company happy, because the people who own the shares, everything. So they all got to be happy. The board's got to be happy,
or else you don't get
be happy.
Yeah, if you don't have happy employees and a happy board, Star Wars dies.
But with Dave Filoni taking the role he has, it puts a person who has really been in charge of all the most recent shows. So if you really want to ask, what's going on with lore right now, Dave Filoni is a good person to be put in charge because he was in charge of the Clone Wars show, which is a very long, and that covers a lot of story from episode 2 and 3, and the extras storylines that kind of spidered off from that, as well as our new stuff. The only thing he hasn't really dipped his toes in yet is with the High Republic, and I doubt he will, force any changes on. And if anything, he'll probably keep continuity there, which hasn't been a problem yet.
Exactly. Anything with the High Republic and the Acolyte coming out soon, I would see Dave as being just a fan of it. He's going to look into the books. He might, will he read all of them? Who knows? But he knows the story at least. He's going to understand the beats that are met in Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, so that way when a show is coming out, he can advise it correctly. Lore Master is kind of he's not going to remember everything all the time always. There may be continuity errors 10 years down the line. That's going to happen. But it's definitely going to be much more of a baseline. And that's what I think Star Wars it really shines on, is not being like Marvel, where they just reset it half the time throughout a random show.
And him being up the ladder and the positions in the company allows him more freedom to not necessarily keep asking for permission. So
Mm-hmm.
it's also a good thing on that aspect that he will be able to just not, like I said, not ask for permission. You can go ahead and greenlight stuff a lot quicker. So we may get some of his ideas or ideas that he agrees with or wants to push in. So if we like Dave Filoni's work, and so far we have,
Yeah.
um, and I mentioned before when we were talking before this that there's some kind of irony that he's head of the storyline and keeping things accurate when a lot of people are questioning how things are going to be and how they are with the sequels, because that window between this and the sequels is getting shorter and shorter. And so some people were doubting Dave Filoni they're rewriting the sequels. They're not, but
Right.
yeah, it's just kind of funny when we were questioning the sequence when it comes to the sequels, because we're getting closer. But yeah. They're not going to get rid of the sequels.
No, and they're not going to retcon that stuff. They're just going to find a way to work through it. And like the Heir to the Empire, everyone for some reason thinks that this new Filoni movie is supposed to pretty much be like, it's either half of them think it's just going to be this lovely thing that's going to help connect us and show more Rise of the First Order, how they built themselves up, what they've been doing as Thrawn comes back. It's not there to like undo anything. If nothing else, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end or middle of this upcoming Mandalorian movie, Thrawn learns about Palpatine and just goes, "Oh, cool," because he's smart, and I'm sure other people obviously know. Krennic's father was in Mandalorian talking about secret projects. So like, not Krennic, the redheaded guy from the sequels. Hux. There we go. Hux. But yeah, his father was in there talking about that. And I guarantee they're going to start tying that in a little bit more to build it out. And Star Wars has been doing a very good job in the books and comics of filling out a lot of those things that people didn't understand. But I feel like Dave Filoni will do a much better job of putting those questions and answers in shows to where people don't have to dig and read.
And I don't think he will go too much into kind of pre-sequel.
Yeah.
I think this movie is just kind of going to be two purposes, going to tie up all Dave Filoni, the Mandoverse, and also kind of end that series of stories to enough part where, okay, yeah, we can see this is when the sequels kind of start up. You know, like we mentioned before in our previous podcast, I think it's going to be a good chance of this big battle is going to kind of weaken the galaxy enough for the First Order to roll in.
Yeah.
So this is give the chance for Palpatine to like, hey, let's move it out, guys.
Yep. So let's start everything up. Get the final order in full build, but also it's going to help us understand like more Mandalorian stuff. It's going to be about Din and like that story still. So if nothing else, we're going to finally understand where were the Mandalorians in the sequels. What are they building up to? Are they just busy? I mean, the whole movie could just be them farming on Mandalore and talking about old stories, and I'd be down. But
I would be surprised if they weren't the focal point of the movie. Them and Thrawn, I think, are going to be the main things.
Yes.
Ahsoka, she's going to be a good big character, but I don't see how Din will not be the main character.
Yeah, and I could see Ahsoka making an appearance. She's worked with the Mandalorians before.
I say Din. I should say focus more on Grogu and the Mandalorian kind of type group, because it's not just Din anymore, really.
Right. And then to speak on these characters, we can now start kind of talking about the shows that we've really enjoyed with Disney Plus. So to start that off, where else do we start but Grogu, Din, Bo, The Mandalorian itself? The Mandalorian
what started all with Disney Plus.
And not only started Disney Plus and really helped it like keep going through the pandemic, it was one of the most watched shows on any streaming platform. It brought a fever back to Star Wars. If
we didn't get Mandalorian, we wouldn't have what we have now. Disney would have put a plug on it. We probably would have gotten maybe one or two. We probably would have maybe gotten like Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
But I don't see how we would have gotten Andor and Ahsoka and maybe one season of Bad Batch.
Yeah, definitely not two.
Because they like their animated.
Plan 99.
The live action is new. It's the animated that they...
The animated's doing a lot of really big pulling and helping in those years between the sequels and now. But yeah, Disney Plus shined with Din Djarin, Baby Yoda. I mean, Grogu became a phenom in a cultural
He's,
aspect.
he's still everywhere.
Yeah.
I can't still go to
People
store owls and not see Grogu.
people who have no idea about Star Wars fell in love with Grogu. And that brought in a lot of new fans. And see, that's the other thing is I feel like a lot of the older fans, us who grew up with the prequels, those before us who grew up with the original trilogy, and those after who are really growing up into the sequel era, it is strange when you see new material because you want it to be what you've already seen, and it will never be that, which is a good thing. You need these characters to evolve and move. You need the stories to evolve and move and become different as times are different, as the society changes.
And as we've seen with the Return of Palpatine and part of Book of Boba Fett, which we'll get into later, and into part of the sequels, part of the prequels, getting the same thing over and over gets a little dry.
Yeah.
And so we like the familiar atmosphere, and that gets confused with we want the same exact thing. And it does get tiring seeing constantly Tatooine, get constantly the same. I get it's supposed to be a space opera, it's supposed to be repeated, but not that much.
Yeah.
We don't need another Han Solo. We don't need another Princess Leia. We don't need another Luke Skywalker.
Which was amazing with Din, because you have this hero who doesn't want to show you his face ever, but has a lot of personality just exuding from the way he carries himself. Which also, huge kudos.
Grogu's new, too.
Yeah, Grogu's new. We've only had Yaddle and Yoda before that. Now we know, like, oh, well, obviously they procreate.
Main characters, we don't get to see their face, and the other main character we don't get to see talk.
Or know is, again, and they're not giving a species. They're not trying to, like, all of a sudden use Grogu as we've all wondered what Yoda's species has been since literally the original trilogy came out. They don't care. They still want that mystery. And that's awesome. There's a lot of mystery that gets built up in the Mandalorian show on, okay, but like, so anyone can be a Mandalorian and like all the lore they're dropping and stuff. It's beautiful. They're building this bigger world and taking us out from just Sith and Jedi. They're taking us out from just rebels and empires.
And they're bringing in a lot of the Mandalorian stuff, which we get into the later seasons, which I've mentioned in previous podcasts, of the original Mandalorian culture, where it doesn't focus on the Darksaber. Darksaber is gone. That's great for Mandalorian.
Yes.
You like the old school stuff. Bringing in non-humans with Grogu, that's old Mandalorian culture. Mandalorians weren't just humans, and there wasn't a bloodline.
Yeah.
So bringing in the idea of Mando being somebody that's selected by the people, not born into it. So Sabine failing and Bo-Katan failing originally had to happen if they wanted to have this idea of the original idea of Mandalore, which is Mandalorians following Mandalore, not following a bloodline or not following a sword.
Right.
So the sword breaking and Bo-Katan failing had to happen. Now, Bo-Katan being chosen as the leader, that could be another thing.
Yeah.
And that's looking like what we're going to have.
But if nothing else, I love that because you see that story through The Mandalorian of her doubting herself and having to realize, I can't rely on a relic. I have
character growth.
Exactly. And that's what everyone needs. And Disney Plus has given us a lot of character growth with a lot of other characters, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But with The Mandalorian, with Din Djarin, with the relationship of him and Boba Fett, I'm totally a Din Bo shipper. I think they would... come on, when he swore his fealty to her, that was a love letter. I think he's got it for Bo, because, I mean, kudos to the props team and finding the original actor and using Katie Sackhoff to have that voice be the same voice. And she took off with it. She became Bo-Katan, like fully, and it was so much fun to see. And with the not only that, but the mechanical side of things, where the Mandalorian has done what Star Wars in the past has been doing so brilliantly for so long, inventing new technology that pushes the film industry. ILM has done a lot. The volume.
Shout out to the actress. We didn't mention that before. The armor, Emily Swallow.
Yes, another amazing character. Which
I haven't. We didn't talk about this before. I didn't mean to interrupt, but she's done a lot of work with. She's got her own costume now, and she goes sees kids with cancer. She does a lot of charity work on her own.
She has fully absorbed this.
She does it for the love of a fan, and she's a fan herself, and it shows. And she's gone out and beyond what she needs to do that. And I'm jealous. I'd love to do that. One of my dreams is to have a Star Wars Black Series action figure of my own character.
Right. Exactly.
That'll never happen, but we got a dream. I'm jealous, but
if nothing else, if they just put us as like clone troopers in the background, or a stormtrooper, or just a random trooper that's the new troopers, hey, we get to be in the background, and they drop a figure, I'm claiming that's me. That's my figure.
Out of the new actors, there's a couple that have done stuff here and there, but she's been doing a ton lately. I don't know if you've seen any of her videos or videos of her where she's going to see, dying children, or just one of my favorite one. I don't know if you've seen it yet, where she goes and greets the actor that plays what's his name, the bad guy.
Giancarlo. Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito. I can't. His last name's hard for me, but
she goes up in costume at the con, and she asks for his autograph. And when he's about to sign it, she takes her helmet off, and it takes him a second to realize that's pretty funny.
And she's done a lot of stuff like that. She has fun with the character. She just walks around as the Armorer at a con, being with the fans. Because being a Mandalorian is almost perfect, because no one knows who's under that helmet, if you're in cosplay or not. So she can literally become one of us again.
She's almost walking in the same footsteps as some of the previous costume as we had with I can't think of their names right now. Chewbacca's actor did the same thing.
Oh yeah, Peter Mayhew.
Peter Mayhew, he did a lot of charity work. Yeah. And then he had a lot with
I know Mark Hamill loves to be Luke Skywalker whenever he can to make people happy.
We get a little sick of it. We get a lot with Jeremy Bulloch as Boba Fett. He did a bit. More with fans, not necessarily charity work. Not as much as Peter Mayhew did most of it back in the day.
And that's, I think, a big vibe that's coming from this new Disney Plus era for Star Wars is how many fans are now actors. Din Djarin. Wow, I just forgot his name. It's contagious. The actor that plays Din Djarin, though, absolutely loves Star Wars. I mean, when you saw him get his figure, and he's like, "That's me. This is my figure," and play with it, he was so excited. And it really proves the point again that's why I feel like a lot of these shows feel like they have love behind them, because it's not only the director, it's not only the screenwriters and the story writers, it's the actors. They want these things to succeed because they love Star Wars too. And Mandalorian has definitely succeeded. It is a super well watched show. Yeah, it gets complained about later on because it's lost its brand newness, but that's all it is. No one who is critiquing The Mandalorian is saying they left a coffee cup. Look at that coffee cup in scene. It's 100% just them being we just wanted to give more, and through restraints from COVID, through doing all the early shooting, we just couldn't. But that's changing now. When we see a lot of these newer shows coming out, they're going big, they're going massive, they're just letting it all out. They're not afraid anymore, and it's gonna continue that way, I think. So Mandalorian, definitely an amazing series. It's super fun to watch. There's so much of it. You see so many characters.
So many cool new characters added in. And then speaking of fan actors, there's none bigger than the one added by this show, which was that played our favorite pilot, Blues.
Carson Teva.
I had to look his name up. His full name is Paul Sun-Hyung Lee.
Yes, he is he has a huge collection too.
You see videos of him. He's got a room that looks better than mine. Even though mine's half in a garage, but he's got a lot of stuff, and he is very human, very humanized actor, very humble. I can't wait to see them coming up playing Uncle Iroh. So good. Right. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah. The Avatar movie, he's going to be playing Uncle Iroh. That's amazing.
He's one of my new favorite actors now.
Right. But not only that, again, we've got an Ahsoka cameo because of it. With The Mandalorian, we've now got
live action Ahsoka,
live action Zeb. I mean, that was amazing.
We got to see. We've seen so much stuff.
Yeah.
and we could go on about, and then we got to see so much different Mandalorian armor.
Yep.
We got to see different new alien creatures. We got to see some new organizations that we never got to see in live action.
Canonizing lore for Mandalore and like the Great Purge and all that kind of Night of 1,000 Tears.
Continuation where the Darksaber went.
Yeah.
We got to see the reimagination of the Super Commandos. I think it's what they're called.
Yeah, Imperial Super Commandos look amazing, and I love that they took from Ralph McQuarrie inspired art to make a lot of the armor.
Yeah, they couldn't really do the original design. It would look so bad in live action. The
the Rebels design, yeah.
Well, no, the original design.
Oh, right.
The old design was so dumb looking. It looked cool on like old graphics and stuff in games, but
now, kind of move on a touch, unless you had something else to really mention for Mandalorian.
No.
We have
three awesome seasons, and we're getting, I believe, one more.
And then we'll have the movie, which I'm down for that. I feel like they could really build a lot for season 4 to make that movie like the end game of 2028 or 2030, whatever it comes out.
We'll see. It'll be very sad when we get no more.
Yeah, that's going to be a sad day. But thankfully, we are getting so many different things. On a totally different view from The Mandalorian, we have Bad Batch. Bad Batch, I think, was a brilliant 2 seasons so far. 3rd is going to be coming out in 2024 and will be the final season. But I think Bad Batch was phenomenal. I loved the Bad Batch. It gave us the clones, and it gave us like the Order 66 and this Fallout and stuff.
Yeah. Who knew another Order 66? I would really enjoy it.
Yeah, and it was different. Watching these people not immediately be taken over because they're different, because they don't really have the same inhibitor chip that works on them like everybody else.
Yeah, they took the best parts of the Clone Wars and the best parts of Rebels, and it felt like they took the pointers from both those shows and combined it in one show.
Not to mention getting Caleb Doom. That was cool to see.
We get the growth from kind of the family aspect from Rebels, because Rebels is kind of a family feel to it with the multiple characters.
Yep.
Whereas Clone Wars kind of focused typically on Anakin, and then it added Ahsoka. Anakin, Obi-Wan added Ahsoka. Mostly focused on Anakin though, and then we got some seasons where it focused on Troopers,
Rex, Cody,
and that those became a fan favorite. So they kind of took the idea of Troopers and that aspect and the maturity of that. And then also the familyness, the growth out of Rebels, and then kind of combined it into one show. Yeah,
and I would say like season 1 of Bad Batch is this awesome epic of these brothers just trying to survive with this new tag-along sister they have, and just trying to pretty much make a way for themselves in the galaxy that wants them dead. Second season, then, we get this tragic like coming of like real age, and just like, no, Crosshair has gone rogue. His chip's been fully activated and increased.
Also, the emotional effects on
Echo, yeah.
Omega, how she's dealing with the loss of one of the members missing. How they're also dealing with that. How they're dealing with the other aspects, and she's coming of age.
As Echo then decides he wants to go off with Rex and help more of his clone brothers, she's like, "Well, I can't lose more people." Spoilers, guys, of course, then she really loses somebody, and we have Plan 99, where Tech gives his life to save his brothers.
Yeah.
So the first season was this, like, are they going to make it? Oh, they did. And I had more of that Clone Wars serial vibe, where each episode was usually resolved in the episode. But then season 2 was like, no, none of that no more. Things are going to be carried over episodes. You're going to see this in one episode, and then 5 episodes later, it's going to finally come back and bite them in the butt. And season 3 is probably going to be tragic in all the best ways.
One of my favorite things we got to see was how the new Empire treated the clones.
Yeah.
We always kind of question how that happened. We got to see what they did with them.
Yep.
We'll find out what they did with them. We got to see, the ones that did stay around, how were they treated? We found out they were treated terribly.
Treated like weapons, like nothing more, not given souls, not given personalities.
Got thrown away. They were the ones that were still alive were becoming homeless.
Yep.
They didn't get no benefit. They didn't get any benefits like what we got for our soldiers in the United States, where they get the VA. They don't have anything. They don't get any benefits. They didn't even have rights, and that was even one of the things they brought up is the idea of the clones getting rights. They're not considered people, especially the Empire.
Yeah, by the Empire, they were considered on the same level as the B-1 droids. Like, they're just fodder. They're just made to fight this war. And to Palpatine, that's what it was. It was just these two armies he could create and have them mash at each other.
So we have this kind of kid show that kind of looks like it's geared towards children. Kind of a similar style to a show that was geared towards children, about a group of throwaway people that were the clones. They were meant to be. They were aged quickly to be thrown away. The only top of they were throwaway clones, but they were the worst batch possible so they were throwaways of throwaways.
Yeah.
And yet we care about them. We care when they die, when they lose. One of them gets brainwashed by the Empire. We see the pain on their faces, and that takes a lot to do.
Yeah. It does a very good job of, again, like you said, it has that, like, oh, it's animated. That's kind of lighthearted. And there are fun moments. There's, like, the race episode where it's just, can Tech do this race? That's so cool and, like, exciting. But then, like, the very next episode, you get, like, Tech having a heart-to-heart with Omega about he just can't show love like the others do. And, like, helping with, like, showing an autistic character, like someone who has difficulties thinking on a normal neuro pattern. He's not like his brothers. He's unique, even though they are literally clones. And that showed so much through the Bad Batch that even when you have Crosshair and Cody talking, you really get to see that personality of them. Or like Crosshair. You get to see that with yeah.
You see that with Wrecker, where he has childlike tendencies, where he never fully matured. I know that's usually kind of the stereotype with a big bulky guy, but you get that a little more a little more deeper than you typically get, where he deals himself dealing with grief and everything. And yeah, it's just, you look at it like you play a video game, like Battlefront or any that we play as a Jedi, and you see these stormtroopers, these clones dying with their faceless, or if you see their face, they all look the same.
Yeah.
So you don't ever care about those guys under the helmets. But this show is the first time. I mean, I wouldn't say the first time, because they did that also in the Clone Wars.
Right.
So this is, I guess, the second time. But
this gave us. It was more, though, because in Clone Wars, they were all united. It was still a big, happy family. All the clones were there. Yes, they lost each other on, like, the Umbara campaign. People died. It was war. But this was a different war. This was literally a war against them as a species. Like, they were like, no, we don't care about clones. You guys... The biggest thing that really made the Bad Batch coalesce into this idea of them versus us was especially the episode with Crosshair and Havoc. That one was... that when Crosshair finally realized how little the Empire cared, they have clone troopers dying, guarding equipment for stormtroopers. And they're not allowed to open it. They're not allowed to use it.
They're brand new equipment.
Yeah.
And they were wearing patched equipment.
Yep.
That they were trying to do. They were doing their duty to keep it perfect condition, and they got in trouble because it was beyond their control. They died to protect it, and they lost some of it. And
to where literally there was only one of the original squad left.
Yeah, and wouldn't give them medical attention.
And then we finally see Crosshair just, bam, right on an Imperial officer. And it then gives us that moment of, even at, like, towards the end of season 2, there's going to be some changes. There's going to be some things happening. So yeah, season 3 is going to be a big one. It's definitely going to either be very tragic or a lot of just, like, circumstance happiness where we finally get to see some things happen. But
possibly return of Crosshair.
Exactly.
So that'd be cool.
You know, coming back to his brothers, mourning Tech. And I look forward to seeing the future of Omega. I mean, if she's also a clone that does not age fast like Boba, how's that going to work out? I'm excited. I like these characters. Yeah, at first maybe Omega, a lot like Ahsoka, was kind of just like that annoying little girl that just caused a lot more problems than she fixed anything. But that was also her role, was to be a speed bump that the Bad Batch had to constantly get over.
Yeah, and I still think, and it kind of teases the idea. The reason the Empire searches her so much is she's the key to part of the unique cloning that she's trying to do, either with the Force or whatever he needs.
Right.
I feel like she's that part of that piece of that puzzle with her and Grogu.
Yep. Yeah, and it's going to be really awesome to see how it all starts to work out. But yeah, Bad Batch was phenomenal. It was a really good time. And also, speaking of armor, they looked so unique, and I loved it. That's why I had to grab all their figures. The season 1 came out. They look so unique. You can really just pull them out and immediately be like, oh, there's Tech, there's Wrecker, there's Omega, there's Hunter, there's Crosshair. And they gave them so much personality, being Bad Batch, being Clone Force 99. That even, again, like we've talked about, they took that name from Clone 99. Another outcast, another super useful, very like mentally advanced clone that just physically wasn't able to do what his brothers were able to do. And that made him an outcast as well. So it really showed that dichotomy not only within the Empire and the Republic versus the clones, but also the clones within themselves. Which was... it's always fun to see. I love a good emotional story, and to build on Cody's story even and make it even more emotional and showing like he's kind of realizing what's going on. That means he knows that he opened fire on Obi-Wan because he had to. And I can't imagine how horrible he feels now after that. So, and it could still go on. Who knows? Because, well, you know, we know Rex makes it into the Rebels timeline. He's going to get nice and old. Echo.
We don't know what happens to Cody.
Yeah, we don't know what happens to Cody or Echo.
Well, we get the first time we've seen him since the actual Clone Wars show.
Yeah.
So that was cool to see that he still exists.
Yep.
I mean, he had to, but we didn't know what happened.
And then he gets either black bagged or he just disappears himself, which hopefully he was smart enough to just get the hell off Coruscant before they came for him. So, next we have one of my personal favorites because the emotion of it, Obi-Wan Kenobi series. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series had a few weird moments. You're like, why is this happening? And I wouldn't say it was like a rushed moment, but it was just very much like that doesn't seem like that character minorly. Nothing crazy, nothing huge. Obi-Wan being distraught, not knowing how to use the Force, kind of losing his connection, that's very common. A lot of Jedi, when they go through trauma like Obi-Wan went through, lose their connection to the Force because they think touching that is what caused all of the bad stuff to happen.
Yeah.
And the
stuff Obi-Wan had fantastic cinematic scenes.
Yes.
That's really what sold the show for sure. Like you said, yeah, there was some quirks that, in my opinion, kind of outweighed the good.
Mm-hmm.
But you viewed it differently, so that's a good thing that we get to talk about this.
Beautiful thing about Star Wars. Because to me, I feel like one of my big things is Vader not showing that he's afraid of fire. Like, Obi-Wan lit that fire, and he was just like, what? Okay. Like, he could have crossed it, sure, the first time. He could have, yeah, whatever. But it set like that, he wanted to hunt Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then we later see him literally pick him up and put him in the fire and just be like, yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? That's what I went through.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird for Vader to have a fear of fire. I don't think he should. I think that's kind of odd. I get he got burnt up, but I think it would be weird kind of trope, and I think they've done that in the past, but I like him not being scared of fire. What Obi-Wan missed out on was he should have kicked sand in his face, because we all know he's scared of sand.
Yeah, he hates sand more than anything. But even the Princess Leia stuff, seeing Flea, I wouldn't say it was off-putting, but I was just like, oh, cool, that's Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. What's he doing? Kidnapping Princess Leia. Okay. The Princess Leia stuff, amazing acting. I think
pros, the actress for Leia,
amazing.
Pros, you got to see Obi-Wan again and Anakin. Though I kind of wish they fixed it in Ahsoka.
The de-aging.
It was a little like I mean, it wasn't bad. It just was a little immersion breaking.
Yeah,
it's like.
Why's he got laugh lines?
it's from being on Tatooine. It aged his skin.
Yeah, real quick, like. And I not only really enjoyed those brief moments where we got to see those like we got to see Obi-Wan and Anakin retraining, so we got to see something like that we haven't seen in a very, very long time. But not only that, it also then showed us that Obi-Wan is, again, so tormented. I think Ewan McGregor did an amazing job in this series showing a tortured Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, it stinks because I wish they did a reverse. I wish they aged him a little bit more. Mm-hmm. It would kind of made more sense. But I mean, it was great. It was fantastic. The scenes when they're both together. There was some goofiness. I personally think him going back for Leia didn't make a whole lot of sense because he should have been with Luke the entire time. But it made for a cool story, so I overlooked that part.
And, it kind of explains then why Leia knows Obi-Wan and stuff like that a bit, but to the same degree, I feel like another thing they could have possibly done better was Reva. I liked Reva.
Oh, yeah.
I loved Reva's story.
She got
the second
ruined.
Stabbing didn't need to happen. Maybe cut her arm off and leave her for dead or something, and I could see Vader doing that. Vader doesn't want to kill everyone just because he's mean. He also likes to torture people and would totally cut your arm off and be like, all right, come at me one more time. Let's see if you can do it. You can't.
Well,
come
the
try.
stabbing as a little girl and her surviving didn't make sense because like you mentioned before, the clones they were finishing off the bodies.
Yeah.
And it was cool seeing. I think they should have gave more time on it. It felt like everything with her in it was rushed, which really ruined any fight for her character. And on top of that, the constant her stabbing and coming back when we've seen major characters get killed with just a quick lightsaber jab or whatever. So it felt like fans were cheated in that aspect, and I feel bad for the actress because it's not her fault.
Right. And of course, just to clearly say this, to all you racist bigots out there that don't like seeing female people of color leads, shut up and go away. It's going to happen. They're amazing actresses, amazing actors.
Oh, yeah.
It's not, the problem is never them. The problem is a script that probably just needed a little bit longer. Obi-Wan Kenobi series could have been way longer than, 8 episodes?
Yeah. And the problem is they get so much crammed in it. So there wasn't much room for her because you got a big focus on Leia and a big focus on Obi-Wan, but
then you have the focus on the Inquisitor. Yeah, and you have all these focus on the Inquisitors.
Yeah, and then we got to see the Inquisitors, and I love seeing her interaction with the Inquisitors. You get to see some more with that. More with her, and honestly, her backstory was awesome because we get to see kind of the two polar opposites of how Grogu faced it and how some of the other characters we see Kanan face Order 66 and how that later affected them.
Right.
With her, she went to the dark side. With Grogu, he kind of closed up.
Yep.
With Kanan, he stayed and hide, and we also get a similar situation with
Obi-Wan, yeah.
Well, the video game character.
Cal Kestis.
Cal Kestis, where he also went in hiding.
Yeah.
So you see the different traumatizations and how they affected, because it was a big deal.
Yeah.
They didn't expect the clones and Anakin to roll in there and just slaughter everyone. So she almost died from that and kind of went down this very dark path. Almost this path where she wanted to get as close as she can to the person who caused this to get her revenge.
Right.
Where she got so blinded went straight into the dark side.
Which, when you, again, not Shadows of the Sith, but the Rise of the Red Blade is a story about an Inquisitor who was offered by Palpatine himself, hey, you want to join my Inquisitors or die? What do you want? Order 66 has happened. You guys were on this planet. You just killed all your clone troopers. I can take you with me and you start learning how to really become powerful, or I'm just going to shoot you here and we're going to leave your dead body. So, again, these books showed us that there was a lot of Jedi being taken into the Inquisitorium. There are way more of the Inquisitors we've gotten to see in Rebels, Clone Wars, video games. There were a lot of Inquisitors. And they could have just done a better job showing that. Had the Obi-Wan series been 12 episodes, a few of those could have been about Reva becoming an Inquisitor, learning about the Inquisitorium. That would have been phenomenal to see live.
Yeah, it was like we got small parts of her, and they wanted to try to do this dramatic ending with her, make us care and root for her. But we couldn't. We barely got to know her, and then we got to imagine that she's still a trainee Inquisitor, but she's still powerful enough to survive on using the dark side, or however she stayed alive. It doesn't make sense, and it feels we feel cheated. She's cheated.
Yeah.
And then it gives ammunition for people that want to hate. I think she should have either had her own series or another series. Whereas her and Leia, I think the Leia and her honestly should have been its own show. I think it took away from Obi-Wan. I feel like we want to give everyone the idea of Obi-Wan and Anakin, this whole thing, but we kind of crammed so much together. Where it's like, you get the 10 seconds of awesome red and blue flashes in her face, and then all right, fast forward.
Yeah. And again, like you said, yeah, if they had given Reva more episodes beforehand for more story, or her own episodes or her own series, an Inquisitorium, we would watch that show. We would watch an Inquisitor show. It's 100%.
I think it would have been so much better, and I've told you this, if we got her as the Inquisitor in Ahsoka instead of the unnamed Inquisitor. That I think it would have been so much cool when we see the helmet come off, and it's an aged Reva who is either so engulfed with the dark side, or she just abandoned all of it together. It's kind of this mercenary.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have worked out really well, I think. But I liked Reva. I liked that Obi-Wan didn't fully become Obi-Wan again until he forgave her and redeemed her. And the story beats were good. They just needed more in between them to make us care that she got redeemed. Like, she almost killed all of the Lars family just because she was in a tizzy. And she was like, if I can't take down Vader, I know who to take down to make him upset. That would have made Vader very upset, but not the way she thought it was going to. He wasn't going to like fall to his knees and cry because she killed Luke. He would have just crushed her to death.
He didn't really care much for the Lars family.
Yeah, he would not have batted an eyelash.
They weren't related to him. They
got his mom killed. That's all he would think.
Yeah, he probably would have killed him himself if he did back then.
Right, if he cared enough to go back there. So it was an amazing series, and before we move on to the last one we're going to talk about in this episode, we got to talk about the final confrontation between Vader and Obi-Wan, because that to me is what puts this show so high. I can forgive almost all of the rest of it and move past it, and so the bad part about it is because it's not in my mind. It's not in my mind because it wasn't super memorable. I don't remember anything besides really Obi-Wan taking over the Inquisitorium fortress and like getting Leia out, and then Vader and Obi-Wan.
Getting Leia out.
The rest of it's good. I liked it, but I only remember Vader and Obi-Wan because it was so powerful. I remember Reva. I love Reva, but Vader and Obi-Wan's scenes together trump every other scene in that series, hands down. That final duel. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. And Anakin, I'm sorry. Those moments had so much emotion in them. And like the lighting going on Anakin's face from, Sith eyes to normal eyes, blue to red. Phenomenal. Some of the best cinematography I've ever seen in Star Wars, especially the Disney Plus stuff. It was gorgeous. That's all I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. Like, I'm going to think of Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and I'm going to think about Obi-Wan versus Vader. Not because Reva wasn't a cool character, but she just wasn't fleshed out.
Yeah. Well, all I'm gonna see is Obi-Wan smuggling Leia out in the trench coat. So. Two different people.
Yeah, totally. It's just a big growth. Don't ask about it. That's rude.
I wish I could see. I don't know if they did, but I wish I could see the robot chicken mocking of that part.
Right. I feel like that was also during a time for Disney Plus. Obi-Wan series kind of was like them really just trying to get stuff out, and now they're kind of slowing it back down and being like, let's make quality over quantity.
And personally, I mean, it still did really well. I kind of wanted to fail in some instances, and not for what you think. Same way I wanted Boba Fett to kind of fail in some ways. I want them to show that the fan base is tired of the familiar. Because Obi-Wan and Boba Fett were really safe.
Yeah.
For Disney. Both of them in their own aspects. So Obi-Wan's stole a lot of ideas from Episode 3 with the confrontation, and Boba Fett stole a lot of stuff from the original trilogy with Tatooine and just Boba Fett.
Yeah.
So super safe. I enjoyed seeing those characters. But yeah, it's me personally, I would have liked to see maybe like a cool maybe like a montage of just them like interacting with Obi-Wan and Anakin, then the duel,
Yeah.
like an hour-long like special, and then I would have been fine with that. I would have liked that better than what we got, to be honest.
And I can agree with that, which is why the next thing we're going to talk about is perfect for a segue from that. A real risk, a real out-of-the-box, totally, like, not connected to nothing. Star Wars Visions. Brilliant.
The show that we didn't know we needed.
Exactly. And now we have 2 seasons of it, and they're both so good. To me personally, Screecher's Reach, with actually just won an award for best single standing animated show, deserves it. Screecher's Reach was gorgeous. It's so colorful, all the reds and the blacks, the way it was drawn, but it's also so different. There's not a single character in Visions season 1 or season 2 that you're gonna know except for Jabba the Hutt in Tatooinean Rhapsody. That's it. They do not try to shove characters you know in your face. These are fans who have an animation studio getting to just play around in the Star Wars galaxy. And because it's not canon and it's not trying to tie to anything, open. So open.
We get a lot of what ifs. Mm-hmm. We get a what if something happened. We also get a what if, especially in season 2, of what if certain studios made a Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And some of it is kind of, kind of torture because we'll never see them actually do a Star Wars series.
Right, like the Ninth Jedi. Ugh.
There's so much good stuff that we get. Especially, I think season 2 is my favorite because they went through different studios all over the world. Each studio from each different countries.
Yeah, continents
and they nailed it out of the park.
Yeah.
On so much of it. I have my favorites, but I mean, yeah, this season 1 is good. But I don't remember season 1 as much as I remember season 2, and it's not because it's newer. I rewatched season 1 for season 2.
Yeah, the biggest thing I know a lot of people pull from season 1 for me is the Ninth Jedi because that was just phenomenal. But also the Ronin. The Ronin took off and just shot the Visions.
The Ronin had to, because there was always like those concept figures in which they were so of the samurai Star Wars characters, and then Star Wars has kind of pulled some samurai aspects, and so there's always that idea of Star Wars, ancient Japan, what would it look like, and concept arts, people drawing fan arts, and then we finally got an actual animation of it, so it was kind of something that was bound to eventually happen.
Oh yeah, and it was the different art styles were so gorgeous to see. We have like not claymation, but almost like we have the stop motion. We have cell shading. We have sketching. We have 3D render. So many different varieties of media, and they all worked. None of them felt like, they shouldn't have done that. It all worked out really well, and that, I think, just, again, opens up so many doors. We have the High Republic. We have the Old Republic. We have the dawn of the Force kind of stuff coming up for us. That's 3 eras that have been so untouched by canon shows. Have at it. Let these other companies make fun little other shorts that are canon. But again, like we talked about, getting away from the Skywalker timeline, though, putting us into new things, new people, new faces. That's what helped The Mandalorian do so well. Pelimoto. How many people fell in love with Pelimoto? A random, scrappy mechanic from Tatooine, Mos Eisley Spaceport. I would have thought in a million years the chick that Din Djarin buys a ship from would be like one of my number 1 favorite side characters.
And I'm hoping they're taking a page since they own Marvel now.
Mm-hmm.
The people are tired of superhero reboots. It's going to be the same with Star Wars. We are tired of the same thing.
Yeah.
We want fresh, well-written, story-driven content. And you can keep some. I would like to have. We have so much of these shows now, and I like to have what we have with really well story written and some just good to watch. We get with like Obi-Wan in comparison to Andor, or and we get that in Visions as well. We get some just really great. One of the first season 2, there's one just great, just artistic. Just there's hardly any words being spoken.
Mm-hmm.
and then we get some great storytelling later on, and some of the others. And so it's great to see the variety of all these different studios. We get a mix of it,
Yeah.
and it's not the same thing anymore. It's not constantly. It's not the same kind of ingredients. It's not the Anakin. It's not the Luke Skywalker. It's not the Han Solo. It's not the Chewbacca. It's not the same.
Yeah.
As much as I like Rebels, we kind of got a mix of the same, and so it's great when we can see good content that's not.
And that's another thing that really, again, I love that so much about Vision Season 1 and Season 2. Also, though, one of the things I loved a lot about Visions, there are so many Sith and Darksiders, and that was so cool. Right. They didn't shy away from going, like, dark places with these episodes. They were not, like, as much as this is, some was anime for Season 1, a lot more, like, based around Japanese cultural cartoons. And Season 2, based around a vast array of different cultural things. Exactly, everything. And it really shone through. Some of them were all about family units and like fighting to just get by in a world that doesn't want you to make it. While other ones were like again, Screecher's Reach was so phenomenal because by the end of it,
the dark side.
Yeah, you're just in the dark side. You're like, well, what is this little girl gonna do? Oh, and then the ship comes down. You're like, oh my gosh, some Jedi is gonna be like, good job, you defeated a Dark Lord. You are a Jedi. Come with me and I will train you. Nope. It was a Sith Lord who was like, you have stood up against something evil. I will teach you true power. That's what, like, floored me. I'm like, oh my God, that's a Darksider. Yeah. They were so ready to just dive in and just have fun. And that's what every project from here on out really feels like, I think. The books, the comics, they're just trying to have fun and really fill in this universe for us to play with.
Yeah. And out of all the shows we didn't talk about today, we're getting another Mandalorian season, we're getting another Bad Batch season. Obi-Wan, no word, probably not going to. But Visions, not a word yet, but I would be surprised if we don't get a season 3.
And of course, Bad Batch season 3 will be coming out in 2024. That will be the last season of Bad Batch. That'll tie up a lot of things there. Maybe give us, like, why was it only Rex, Wolf, and Gregor on that one planet? What happened to Cody? What happened to Omega? What happens to Echo? All of them. We have so many things to worry about in a good way. Like, what's going to happen? And that's what I've been really loving about the Disney Plus era of Star Wars, is that it has breathed some new life into Star Wars and brought in way more fans. I will never, ever say something that brings in more new Star Wars fans is bad. That alone is a great thing. We need fresh blood. I refuse to allow this fandom to be full of old curmudgeons. It will never work out well for it. Then it dies. We can't let it die.
Yeah, and with Visions, it's probably one of the one shows and tells the Jedi's kind of.
Mm-hmm.
If they do Visions, they do 10 seasons of it. It's the only show out of all these that I would be happy about.
Right.
I don't even as much as I like Andor, I couldn't do 10 seasons. Mandalorian, it would be tired of Din.
Yeah.
It would ruin the show. But 10 seasons of Visions of how they've done season 2 would be phenomenal.
Because it's so different. Every episode you're like, I have no idea what this is going to be, but I'm excited to see it. And that kind of new vibe and that new blood is what's also going to help us then get these people from these, these smaller animation groups into, with Disney Plus, with Disney, with Lucasfilm, to help make these new projects and breathe new artistic styling into the show. We don't want the only Hispanic representation to be like Poe Dameron and 2 other characters. We want, this is like an entire like epic about this like awesome family that deals with a lot of like Aztec style of like issues, and let that happen. Because Star Wars is for everyone. And I think Visions is a great way of proving Star Wars is for every culture, every creed, every person. There is something there for you. And if you can't exactly see there, it still exists in the galaxy, just waiting for someone to write that story. And it's been a really hard time, especially coming from remembering being a prequel fan in the early prequel days. God, it was hated. Jake Lloyd did so, he has What is it?
So
Jingle All the Way.
You think the sequels were hated?
Yeah, we have he had Jingle All the Way. Love that movie. And we have The Phantom Menace. And he got so much flack from The Phantom Menace. He had a mental breakdown and has never acted since. It's horrible. Like, I know there's a lot of distress and there's a lot of issues on, X, Facebook, YouTube, whatever. But that's so much smaller. Now it's just people that are always rude, they're always mean, they're always hateful, just commenting the same hateful crap they would do to anyone's posts, just in the Star Wars community, because they know it gets so much vitriol back. A lot of people in this current world with Disney Plus are only negative because that gets them more views. That's literally it. When you really pull it down and look at these series, a lot of the issues do not actually exist the way they are put out there to be. There are issues with some of them, but that is, again, from a certain point of view, based on each individual and how they feel on said show. Mike isn't the hugest fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi for great reasons. I would never once say your reasons are bad. They just didn't happen to me. I didn't pick up on them because, lightsabers go burr, brain shut off. But the same with Visions. A lot of people didn't care about Visions because if it's not canon, I don't kind of care. And that's okay because other people got to have fun with it. Bad Batch, same thing. A lot of people were like, dude, I'm so done with clones. While other people were like, yes, different things. And of course, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but then live action clone stuff eventually. Those little tidbits, those little tiny nuance and Easter eggs that get thrown into these shows, that's being a Star Wars fan to me.
And it's great that we have so many of these options because I'll say it again and again. Those of us that are a bit older know that we didn't have these many options. Mm-hmm. We were very limited in our Star Wars options. It took forever to get another movie, and we got the movie. Most people hated it, and the rest of our content was mostly books. Yeah, there wasn't very many newer books. Most of the books were older. And the comics were all over the place. Yeah. There was no consistency with them. The video games, there was a couple. And then there was a lot of trash, but there's some big ones. Yeah. We didn't get what we have now. The only thing we have now that kind of is lacking is a lack of video games. Yeah. But at least we're finally getting good quality video games. So
right. And that's the big thing, too. I feel so bad for Jedi Survivor. To kind of date the episode, didn't win really many game awards this year. But going up against Baldur's Gate and Alan Wake and all that stuff, it was just a bad year for... Had Survivor maybe also come out later in the year, that might have helped it. But Cal Kestis' story is great. And I look forward to hopefully getting Cal Kestis in the future for maybe a few shows or something. They've started to prove hey, if the actor is there, why not use him, right?
Yeah, it's like a lot of people went in, to run state championship track, and there's a lot of big competitors that have won all, and then all of a sudden you get, a gold medalist track star showing up. It's those games are great. There were so many good games this year. Mm-hmm. And then Baldur's Gate 3 is okay.
Sit down. Let me show you something. Hey, if they ever make a Star Wars Baldur's Gate, I'll never play anything else. So, again, guys, we will definitely be covering far more of the rest of this in the next part. I just want to give you a quick reminder. We're not shutting off just yet, but that we will be covering Book of Boba Fett. We will be covering Tales of the Jedi. We will be covering Andor, and we will be covering Ahsoka in the next episode coming out next week.
And possibly a little on Young Jedi Adventures as well. It's the forgotten Disney Plus show.
Well, hey, I'll throw that in there real quick. A great way to pad the last little bit of this out, guys. If you have a kid, definitely put on the Young Jedi Adventures. It's colorful, it's bright, it's fun. But even if you're an adult and you just want something to literally just be in the background and not have to worry about super heavy storyline, it's just fun. It's literally just a child show, and that's great. Again, like we were talking about with getting new fans in, that was something that had been really hurting Star Wars. They were not thinking about the children as much anymore. They were thinking about the man children, the grown children. But now getting things with High Republic and for children, it really helps push these new Star Wars fans into Star Wars. And with them getting into it in the High Republic, allows things like the Acolyte and other things to be like, oh, no.
Yeah.
We can step away from the Skywalker saga. We can finally let this horse lay down.
I was a breath of fresh air to get a adult-based Star Wars show with Andor.
Mm-hmm.
More focused towards adult. But, again, Star Wars is for everyone. And we gotta still leave things. And one thing we never truly had was a Star Wars show for the really younger audience.
Right. Because Clone Wars and like all those things were great. Rebels are great, but there's death. There's
some couple of shows I think with Resistance it was kind of close.
Yeah,
but
Resistance
still wasn't really meant for smaller kids.
Right, it was meant for like preteen kind of. But this Jedi Young Adventures, it's so amazing that they were literally just like, no, this is for kids. It's not going to be crazy.
Your child can have a plastic stick to whack you with.
Exactly. And now, but how amazing is that? We're getting more of those rotoscope sabers. The toy aisles are getting filled again. And that to me is like, yes, there we go. Star Wars is back. After the pandemic, things were really hard for like finding figures or finding books. But we're getting back into the point where now it's like you walk into any store and you're like, oh, cool, they have Star Wars stuff here. It doesn't have to be figures. There's collectibles now everywhere, especially because Grogu. Grogu's face is stamped on everything.
It's not fair because all I had was Barney
I had a wrinkly old Yoda to look up to.
I had creepy puppets and people in costumes.
Yep.
I would have loved to have a Star Wars show when I was a little. I would have had a lot more. I loved Star Wars when I was little, but I would have loved Star Wars a lot more if I had something I could have understood.
Right. And not only that, but like the cosplay community is able to blow up from so many different things now. And that's what Star Wars is truly always kind of turning into, is a community effect, is this fandom. And now, a lot of people refer to it as the fandom menace because there's a lot of naysayers, there's a lot of bad people. Let me tell you this, there's not a lot. They're just very loud and extremely annoying. And because they're really good at being both of those things, they feel like they're a lot. But most fan base in Star Wars fandom is exactly like these two sweaty nerds you see right here. We do not agree on everything, but we do agree that at the end of the day, Star Wars is what's the most important. And as long as Star Wars gets to continue, that's awesome. You don't have to like every single thing about a show to enjoy that the show exists.
So stick around for part 2 when that airs to find out what the remaining shows, what we liked about them, and then what shows that we liked overall.
Yep, we'll be doing our top 3 favorites. And it's hard to figure out because you're like, well, I love all of them. They're all 8 of these shows are brilliant, but there are 3 that will always kind of stand out to each individual. So out of these 4 we've talked about, or honestly any of the 4, feel free in this video or in the next video, guys, to put in the comment section what your favorite show was and why. Also, let's talk about what you didn't like about a certain show. Constructive criticism is always welcome. Hate isn't needed, but if you also agree with Mike that like, yeah, man, Reva could have been done so much better, say that. Let's talk about it. The discourse is always open, as it should be. So
tell me why you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me why your opinions are incorrect.
So, now that we've really kind of gotten this first little bit, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, there's so many things we could talk. We could have probably talked about The Mandalorian the entire time, but it's a huge show filled with so many amazing characters, new things, re-showing us Mandalore, getting cool lore. Obi-Wan Kenobi series, again, same thing, giving us cool things to see, re-showing us how these relationships were built. We have Bad Batch showing us the after effects of the clones versus the Empire and how scary that was for them. And we have Visions. Just throwing it out to the wind and just having a good time. So, again, next time, Ahsoka, Andor, Tales of the Jedi, and Book of Boba Fett. Definitely a lot of fun stuff to talk about there. Thank you guys all so much for joining us on this week's episode of the House of Holocrons podcast. May you all have an amazing rest of your day, and as always, may the Force serve you well.
And may the Force be with you.